in the back? Do you remember that?
Oh, that's the road, that's the walk behind.
Is it?
Yeah, but yeah, the huge cypress which supports two lots.
There was a giant cypress that was totally dead.
Oh, no, this is not it, this is not it.
Well, maybe not this one. There's one that was
Zach, your father declared it really nice.
oh,
Before you know it, I remember seeing how you did this.
oh, maybe it was that. I remember being there. It was somewhere in the area where it's cypress. I might have done it there.
Yeah.
I remember this.
Really good.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, but it's a little early now. I just went over to the site to make sure, but I've got to get on the agenda. I'm not on the agenda. So I know.
I have it, no, I'm on the, I got my email, but I have it on my iPad.
It's not the right agenda.
Well, it first came on July 11th, but I now have today's agenda.
No, I haven't yet.
I have it on that.
It went to council to talk about whether they should send it to forest. Because it's technically forest parks and beach is the official title, even though we leave the parks off. Because the responsibility is of forestry and forest parks. When I looked at it, council documents from the 80s, it's just forestry.
You've got it here?
Yeah.
All right, we're right spot. We'll call the meeting to order at 2:33.
Chair Brzezowski,
Present?
Commissioner Buder,
Present.
Commissioner Mickey,
Present.
Commissioner Montmorency. Thank you.
Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. Yeah.
Close enough.
Okay, we'll start today. Public comment may be given in person at the meeting or using the Zoom module. Under the Brown Act, public comment for matters on the agenda must relate to that agenda item, and public comments for matters not on the agenda must relate to the subject matter jurisdiction of this body. Hateful, violent, and threatening speech is impermissible. Public comment as it disrupts the conduct of the public meeting. This is a warning that if a member of the public attending this meeting remotely violates the Brown Act by failing to comply with these requirements, then the speaker will be muted. Do we have anybody that would like to offer public comment in the chambers today? Come on. Hello, Melanie. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening, afternoon rather. I would just like to offer a couple of comments. Number one, questions really. Number one, how are we doing with the plant list and working with Nikki Nedoff et al. On that item? And then number two, where are we with wrapping up the staff report on the Davi Resource Group, plan for our forest? I understand that they were supposed to be completing that report, and in quicker fashion that we all anticipated subsequent to the workshop. So I was just wondering, where are we, and can you give us some update? And then the last thing is, Justin and I were at a very informative meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it was regarding the Archangel project. I don't know if any of you are aware of it, but they are a group of people who are trying to, let's put it this way, replant and restore ancient forests in this state and around the country, and they're even doing projects around the world. They are responsible for the wonderful Redwood project, the replanting that's all based on genetics. They are doing cloning, and so a number of us met with them, and I was hoping that maybe, Justin, you would give all of us kind of an update on your perceptions of how you saw, you know, and understood what they were offering. I think that it's really, really a very interesting and very informative group, and their level of scientific expertise is just unparalleled. So, you know, maybe, Justin, if you could kind of give us your perceptions about them and how they could possibly fit into what we're doing, it would really be grand. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Melanie. I think we'll address some of your questions in our announcements coming up.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, welcome, Dale.
Thank you. Dale Byrne, Carmel Cares today. And I just wanted to fill you in, as I tend to do, on our projects that you have approved. The first one I'm going to talk about is the landscape barrier project on Scenic Pathway. Some of you may have gone down and checked out our progress, but we are making progress. We have installed, as of tomorrow, 70 out of 125 6x6 posts.
Yeah. Wow.
And so tomorrow we will finish, and I don't know if all of you saw the actual project plan, but we have diagrams, and then pink is what we're doing in this phase. So we're finishing up 160 feet right south of 8th right now. We're going to finish that tomorrow. We've also done 13th Avenue, and we've done Santa Lucia going north. So we're about 56% through with the project as of tomorrow. So far, all the comments have been very positive, so we're happy about that. It's always good in this town to get positive comments.
It looks beautiful.
We're going to, thank you. We're going to take a little bit of a break next week because we're replacing the front railing, like for like replacement at the Forest Theater seating area. We didn't quite make it before the Wizard of Oz started, but we came close. It's been a little shaky for a while. So the other thing I'd like to do is to sort of get you thinking, because when we finish this project, the median islands, we mulched them this week, so that project is completely finished. We're sort of in maintenance mode at this point. And the comments have been extremely positive about that, so we're happy that we all did a good job on that. The next thing is, what project should we look at next to cooperate with and do a public-private partnership, perhaps? We wouldn't have the budget money right away, but we can start planning. And a couple ideas I want to throw out there, because it's really your job to sort of flesh these things out with us. We just did the Ocean Avenue medians. There's also one on Junipero going north right around the corner that probably could use some help. It's not awful, but it's not great. We could maybe do the same thing on that. I don't think that's a big project. The other two medians that really need some help are the two entry on Rio. Yeah. They've been pretty sad for a while, and it would be nice to do something there, longer term view. The other thing is the fence around Devendorf Park has been shaky for a while. We could use the same material and do that if you like. And also the war memorials inside Devendorf Park could use some help. We were doing some new planning areas there before the city took over, and I don't have a problem with them taking over, but it might be time to put on our vision hat and start taking a look at how we can make some improvements at Devendorf as well. Okay. So I think that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all Carmel Cares does, Dale. It's really a huge contribution to our city. Anybody online? I see, okay. Cindy Lloyd.
Cindy, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I just did. Thank you very much, members of the Forest and Beach Commission. My name is Cindy Lloyd. First of all, I want to thank Alan Wheat and everybody who worked on the median projects down Ocean Avenue, because the plantings are absolutely stunning. And I've heard nothing but good reviews from everybody. Today, my daughter and I installed some native plants in the arch side pockets. I had already done it in the front pocket. And Alan Wheat had given me some of his plants so that we could echo the median plants into the arch. And eventually, I will replace the quote-unquote exotics with natives, but we'll do that on a short, slower basis. But a huge, huge shout out to Public Works. I am just astonished at the wonderful protection that has been going up on the first median between Junipero and Mission to keep the visitors out of the medians. I don't know who quite came up with the idea of that, but it's brilliant, and I can only hope that it works. And if it doesn't work, then somebody is just defying any kind of attempt to keep people from trampling our new planted gardens. So thanks all around. Thanks for the Forest and Beach Commission for shepherding and approving projects like that. And thanks to Alan Wheat, thanks to Carmel Cares, thanks to Public Works, the greatest department in city. Even though I know administration doesn't like me to say that, but I'm a doer and a gardener, and obviously that's where my heart and soul lies. So thanks you all very much for what you do.
Thank you, Cindy.
Linda, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes. I just wanted to speak to the Archangel project, which sounds like a lovely project. The only problem that I would point out is the idea of cloning. Dr. Deborah Rogers, genetic conservationist with the University of California at Davis, has written guidelines for us, and they are in our current forest management plan as to how to protect the genetic integrity and structure of our precious Monterey Peninsula native Monterey pine forest. And she recommends that cloning is not a good idea. Actually, in her book, In Situ Genetic Conservation of Monterey Pine, recommendation number 11, for planting of Monterey pine within an area where mixing with the native gene pool is possible, the planting stock should be locally adapted and contribute to maintenance of natural genetic diversity of the native Monterey pine forests. Seeds should be preferred to seedlings. Clonal material should not be used except in limited scope in situations where this is the only feasible or well-reasoned alternative. For large planting projects, the source for propagules should be chosen so as to create a large effective population size and to support the local close genetic integrity of the forest around it. So I'm a little worried, that the idea of taking clones from one particular tree or from several particular trees is just not a very good idea. Deb says, Dr. Rogers says, to the extent possible, allow natural screening by planting several seedlings and allowing for some to die or be removed later. Plant seedlings rather than clonal material, thereby maintaining more genetic diversity. So as we restore our Monterey pine forest, I think we should take her guidance and that of the University of California at Davis and the genetic experts on Monterey pine to heart, because I think they give us good guidance we should follow. We should save the seeds from the trees that are coming down, the old ones particularly. We should have a seed bank. We should have a seed planting program, and we should plant more than one seed wherever we're going to plant Monterey pines. We should plant several so that that are appropriate to the area where they're going to be planted, so that one at least will survive into the future. So we'll have a Monterey pine forest for our village and pine forest. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we don't have any other public comment. We'll move on to announcements.
Thanks, Kelly. So speaking to some of the questions that Melanie had, I was going to go over what me and Tom and Kelly and Mary and Brandon worked on hopefully a pretty close schedule to get the forest management plan all the way through, and what's kind of coming up soon. First off, we've had talks to maybe reword some of the semantics and drop the urban, so it's either Carmel Forest Management Plan or Forest Master Plan, but take out the word urban from the title. We have looked into CEQA, and we'll probably need something from CEQA. Probably not a full EIR, but something just to go over it to make sure, because we're making an amendment to our local coastal program. But that shouldn't be that big of a deal. It's right. We talked to Davey this morning. The first draft with all of our comments should be coming out mid-September. So once that's digested, we want to have another steering committee workshop with all of you and the steering committee and the public to kind of go over and see what everybody thinks. Then once we do all that, take those into account, we'll have another working session with Forest and Beach and Steering Commission, and then we'll just kind of trying to keep hammering out the process to the point where the goal is to get something in front of you guys by November, December to vote on, to try to send to council. And then we put it out for a formal public comment, written public comment between 30 and 45 days, somewhere in there, whatever CEQA calls for. Because I think it has to go to, Brandon said council twice. I don't know what, maybe they need comments on the council approval, and then eventually this needs to be ratified by the Coastal Commission because it is an amendment to the LCP. So we had January, February send to council once or twice. So hopefully Q1, end of Q2, or end of Q1, beginning of Q2, we'll start seeing the end of the finish line here. Is that's the tentative goal that we're aiming for.
And I think just to clarify, so that just from a timeline perspective, we're anticipating being able to have a working session of the steering committee, which would be held in a public forum.
Yes.
Ideally, we're going to try and get a date late September. But before the end of September, we'll have to see on the draft.
We're going to see when they get us the draft and how long it takes us to digest the changes.
But I think the goal is that we'll have a steering committee session in an open public
first. Yeah,
forum.
that'll be the first thing we do.
Step, right, and then that will, those comments will get reflected into the draft before it comes to Forest and Beach.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And I think the title you were referring to is, I think, Justin, we're simply doing a V2, an update of the current plan. And our current plan is called?
The Carmel-by-the-Sea Forest Management Plan.
Correct. So we're just going to be doing an update to that existing plan.
Yeah, I believe so.
Title. Okay, great.
That's it.
Did you want to talk about Nikki Netoff that we?
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a few other things that were in the works. So once we get the draft, we'll be sending that to Nikki Netoff to go over it. We talked with her. She's working with us, and she seems really open to everything that we want to do. And then one of the things, the last thing that Davey's doing is they're talking with Thomas Hood about interesting architectural quirks in town of people like building houses around trees and stuff. So they're getting the last kind of stakeholder like background interviews done before they get like finalize the draft for everybody. So.
And I guess we should just add that there will continue to be multiple opportunities for public comment ahead as
Yes.
this project progresses, right? So we'll have multiple, there'll be a formal public comment phase that we'll find out what the dates are, 30 to 45, depending upon what the CEQA requirement is, but there'll be a formal public comment period. Definitely.
Yes.
And then I think there'll be, while the steering committee work session will be a work session held in a public forum. That won't be we won't be having public comment throughout that whole working session, but there will be an opportunity for people to comment before and at the end of that meeting.
Yeah, and again, just to touch on the tree species list again, in the goals and actions from Davey that we went over today, and also throughout the whole time, that's separate from the plan, and it's meant to be a living document to change. You know, if we don't like certain trees, or if trees aren't doing well, if we plant a whole bunch of one tree and then for some reason, you know, it's been warmer, it's been wetter, a new bug comes in, we can just strike those from the list, or things that do really well that are, you know, native or near native, or and whatever we need to do, that's a living document that we can change as we need to.
But I think we've heard from our community, right? We do want to have an updated tree list as part of
and there's definitely going to be one. Just saying that it's not going to be, you know, the 10 Commandments set in stone.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah. Any other announcements, Mary or Justin?
No other announcements.
Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. So items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of commission discussion and/or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all of the recommended actions. Today on the consent agenda, we just have one item, the approval of the minutes, the July 11th, our last meeting on July 11th, 2024. Would anybody like to propose a motion?
I second.
Thank you.
Chair Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Buder,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Commissioner Montmorency.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is passed.
Thank you. Moving on to today's orders of business. The first item on our order of business is to receive a presentation on the annual monitoring report of the North Dunes Habitat Restoration Project for fiscal years 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24. So the past 3 years from Dennis Duffy and Associates. Welcome. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me. I have a presentation that's PowerPoint. We could do that, or I can just...
Sure. Yeah,
Is that
we can
okay?
put it. Do you want to help him?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's working. Oh, it's got some work to do there. Yeah. So I know two of you. I know Mary and Justin, but nice to meet the rest of you. Thanks for having me here. John Wonke, senior environmental scientist with Denise Duffy and Associates. I'm super honored to be involved in the North Dunes project. I grew up around here, so I'm familiar, with it. I've just kind of kept my eye on it for a long time, and I think all of the work that's been done and all the efforts from the volunteers and everything, it's just great. I think it's a really valuable and unique little gem in the city. So thank you for giving me the chance to work on it. Justin says it might take several minutes. Yeah, I'm just gonna give a brief summary of the maintenance activities and the monitoring results from this past year. As indicated, the report that we prepared and submitted back in June covered the last 3 years. But I'll kind of just refer to it things as year 8, but you'll see that if this pulls up, I provide the sort of the history of how things have been progressing, so you can see the last 3 years pretty easily.
While that's coming up, may I just ask a question?
Sure.
I walk on that boardwalk practically every day. I
Yeah.
love looking at the sign there on the lupin that we have there that's a unique or endangered, I guess, species
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So, and it's been in bloom, which
Yeah.
is beautiful, right? So I'm just curious that, how successful is the restoration of the lupin in that area?
Yeah, I'll touch on that, but that's one of the key things that we monitor out there is the population of the tide springs lupin, with that patch alongside the boardwalk being the main occurrence there. We did find that this past year, the number of lupins at the site has decreased. But I'll get to that. You'll
Okay.
see it, but northeast.
Does it have to grow in the sand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a dune species, and
Okay.
it's state and federal endangered.
No, PowerPoint or PDF?
Let's do the PowerPoint. And it only occurs in a few places in the state. Here, also there's some populations over to Sillamar and Pebble Beach, and then up by I think Point Reyes, and then maybe up. I think there's another one north of there.
And Garapata too, isn't there?
I'm not aware of tide springs lupin at Garapata.
Maybe it's what it looks like.
It might be another rare plant. I don't know.
It's yellow.
It's pretty.
It's pretty.
It's really pretty. I love to see
Yeah,
it.
it's a beautiful plant. Okay. So Justin, I hit.
If that doesn't work, then just tell me when to advance it. Okay,
Usually you just hit.
I know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's
There you go. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly summarize the consultant roles and responsibilities for year 8 of the project. As we just discussed, DD&A took over the monitoring and reporting tasks for this year. Previously, that had been done by Joey Durrell-Canepa of Native Solutions. So this spring, we collected the percent vegetation cover and the census of the tide springs lupin. And also we recorded plant species richness, which is the number of plant species present on the site. And we also worked with Joey Durrell-Canepa to acquire her maintenance records and also just coordinate with her on her observations and work that she's doing out there. We prepared a draft annual report, which we submitted at the end of this past June, and we'll be finalizing that document here probably this month. And we also performed some periodic maintenance inspections, just did thorough walkthroughs of the site, and conveyed any observations that we had and maintenance issues like fencing and whatnot to Mary. Native Solutions continued to coordinate and oversee the volunteer program this year, which I think is just fantastic. It's a really great component of the project to have that public engagement, and it's also just valuable for maintenance. So I think her main tasks were weed control with a little bit of planting, and then just the general sort of environmental education that she does with the groups that come out. So this year, I think the main volunteer groups that worked on the project were the Carmel Garden Club, as always, and also some Carmel High School students. Most of their work was done between January and June. That's sort of the main weed control season because it's spring. They hand pulled just under a ton of weeds, focusing on the 2 species of ice plant that occur out there. The picture to the right is a big pile of narrowleaf ice plant that they pulled out in June by hand. And then they also worked on removing annual grasses and some of the other invasive annual species out there. And city staff also did some work out there this past year. They repaired the guideline fencing, so the cable fencing. There were some posts that rotted out that had to be replaced. They replaced the guideline fencing along San Antonio and the parking lot along Ocean with a nice new cedar split rail fence. There's a picture of it there to the right. They off-hauled and disposed of the weeds that the volunteers removed. And then I directed some of Justin's guys to do some manual ice plant removal as well. And then they also did some limited acacia removal in the central part of the dunes last fall. So pretty similar level of effort, I would say, this year to the previous 3 years. And that's all detailed in the report. So in terms of monitoring, this table shows the measurements that each year we are required to collect, the primary ones being native and non-native vegetation cover, plant species richness, the number of species on the site, native or non-native, the census of the Tidesfrum's lupin population, and then also we compile any observations of the legless lizard. And when we're monitoring, we always have the success criteria in mind that are defined in the restoration plan. So this is a graphic of the North Dunes site. Everyone's familiar with it. It just shows those purple lines are the 18 fixed transects, the same transects that have been monitored each year. On our first day of monitoring, we worked with Joey Drill Canepa to make sure that our staff was calibrated with her methodology and that we were doing things consistently with the way they've been done in the past. And then this figure also shows, it's hard to see here, but you can see on the right the new fence that runs along San Antonio and down the parking lot there. So getting to the results, this graph shows the past 8 years of monitoring data. The green line is the percent native cover that's been measured each year. And then the orange red line on the bottom is the non-native cover that's been measured each year, with the success criteria shown for each, the green line being the goal greater than 50% native cover, and then the red line, the goal of less than 10% non-native cover. Those are the criteria defined in the restoration plan. Last year, you can see there's a data gap where it says no data because the monitoring was not performed by the previous contractor, so there's just a hole there. So on the far right of the graph, you can see a point. This year we measured 54% native cover, and then we measured 16% non-native cover, so a drop in native and an increase in non-native. This is it's not alarming. It's pretty typical for vegetation to fluctuate over time for a host of different reasons. The increase in the non-native cover from 9% 2 years ago to 16% now, based on our data collection, is mainly attributable to an increase in ice plant. Yeah. The two species, narrowleaf ice plant, which is highly invasive, and there's a lot of it out there, and it's really starting to regenerate. And then, of course, just the freeway ice plant that everyone's familiar with. So that's a big contributor to that increase in cover. And because it is mat forming and smothers all of the other native vegetation, that also explains some of the drop in native cover, because areas have been reoccupied with ice plant. Overall, though, I think the site looks great. There's a high level of species diversity out there. And I mean, overall, I still think we're on a really good track, as long as we can continue the maintenance efforts that have been ongoing. So the next big thing that we're interested in is the population of Tidesfrum's lupin. This map shows in the blue the existing areas that are occupied by Tidesfrum's lupin, the main occurrence being along that boardwalk. We did a very detailed census this year where we walked through the entire site, focusing on the known areas, and we used pin flags, colored pin flags, to mark every single seedling that we came across so that we knew we weren't double counting plants or missing plants. And so we have a good confidence level on how accurate this is. So the result was a decline. This parameter has sort of a difficult success criteria to meet. The goal is 1,000 plants in 10 clusters. I'm not sure how the author of the restoration plan came up with that. To me, it would make more sense to have something like a trend that you'd be looking at, like you want to have a stable population or an increasing population. So if you were to look at all of our monitoring data, you could conclude that we have a stable or increasing population over time. But this year we did observe a decrease, so we counted a total of 583 plants throughout the entire site, with the majority of those being in that area by the boardwalk. It's difficult to say exactly why the decrease occurred. We did observe quite a few old plants that appeared to have died within the last 1 to 2 years. We counted, I think, like 85 of those. So that is one reason why the population has decreased. We also didn't observe very many seedlings. So it's suggesting there's an issue with regeneration. Could have to do with climate, could have something to do with herbivory by small mammals or deer, or some other reason. So this is something that we can't really necessarily manipulate or control. This plant is extremely difficult to propagate and replant, and I know that Joey had tried that in the past and had some very poor results, which I have also had experience with propagating this plant. It just doesn't like to take. So there's not a lot we can do and to really like come up with this goal of 1,000 plants in 10 clusters. But having said that, you know, we can make sure that our management actions we're doing the most we can do to protect these existing populations. So, and I'll get to that on the last slide in the recommendations. But this is just a quick summary of the results. Same table as before. We've been achieving the cover criteria. We missed the non-native vegetation cover criteria this past year, and also the number of non-native species. And then we missed on the tides from lupin. But as you saw in the past graph, we've never been able to achieve that one. And then no legless lizards were observed this year, but having said that, habitat is just outstanding out there for them, and I'm sure they are there, but we're just not seeing them because there's not as much hands-on work happening. So in terms of what I feel we should continue to do going forward is to, first of all, continue supporting the volunteer program. I think, like I said, that's just a great part of this project, and it's really valuable. Having said that, there is a lot of area out there, and I don't think that the level of effort that's possible with the volunteer program can really address everything that needs to be addressed. If it was me, I would recommend supplementing the volunteer activities with a hired specialty contractor just to go out there and take care of some of the really nasty heavy lifting. We can prioritize ice plant control in the areas near the tides from lupin. There's definitely some pretty big patches of ice plant several feet from the tides from lupin, and there should be none. There's also a big patch of acacia still left in the north central dunes, a little ways south of that boardwalk, adjacent to the tides from lupin population, that I feel shouldn't be there. I think it would be good to remove that. And if we do remove it, we should do it outside the nesting bird season, so September to January. And then it's been quite a few years, or a number of years, since the acacia on the bluff was trimmed. It's getting pretty tall now, so that's just another thing that I think could be done, but also outside the nesting bird season. So there'd be a fall activity. And then, of course, continuing inspections and repair of fences. The guideline fencing, I think, does a great job of keeping the public out. So that should stay in place and be maintained. And then finally, on that 4th Street boardwalk, there is guideline fencing on either side of it. A lot of people are on their way to the beach with their dogs, and I'm a dog lover, you know, all that. I come to the beach with my dog, but you know, they just run right under that wire fence and like to go in there and dig holes and do what dogs do. One idea is to consider a wood split rail fence along one side of that boardwalk. I know that there's probably aesthetic considerations to think of and whatnot, but I kind of feel like a wooden fence would be a bit of a dog deterrent, just because there's a barrier down at their level. You could even supplement it with like a grate or wire or something, but it's just something that we can talk about and think about. And that was also a recommendation that Joey Durrell-Canepa had given me. So thanks for listening. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, thanks for having me.
Just stay up for just a minute.
Sure.
Are there comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a question. I noticed a lot of spikes in 2018-19 in the lupin and in some other plants. Is that because of the heavy rains that particular year? Do you have any information on why that would be?
A lot of times it's not the heavy rains. Some of the native dune species, Tridsperm's lupin included, it's not that they don't like the extra water, but they're adapted to, you know, dry conditions, and it's not necessarily because of rain. I mean, they might even do better with a little bit of like
drier
fluctuations. Not long-term drought, but just some lesser rainfall.
That was the year
know.
of all the storms. That's why I was...
Of 18?
18, 19?
Yeah.
That was the year...
I know that in one of those
rains.
years, they recorded a lot of seedlings, small plants, you know, that germinated from the seed bank.
Mm-hmm.
Possible that could explain the spike,
Okay.
that a lot of the seed bank germinated, but then over time, those plants just didn't survive,
Okay.
and therefore, you know, it declined.
So do you know what the best conditions are for this plant?
I can't say like, oh, there should be this many inches of rain per year, you know, or like be very specific about it. But in general, I mean, this plant prefers open sand. It doesn't like competition with like annual grasses or non-native species or other native plants that provide too much duff or litter layer.
Okay.
So, but then at the same time, it can't have too much open sand or too much sun. And this site, for whatever reason, you know, Carmel is a little bit more south-facing compared to, say, like Asilomar, where the other Tridsperm's population is. And it's, I think, probably the annual sort of average or daily temperature out at this area is more extreme than the Asilomar area, because that population is just thriving lately.
Oh, interesting.
So, but it gets more fog and
Okay.
I think more cool days than this area. It's pretty sheltered. from
So
the
we've
wind.
only hit our number just that one year and
Yeah.
surpassed it. That's okay.
Just that 1 year. And even then, we've never had 10 clusters. There's only been between 2 and 4.
Okay.
2 main ones. And then the other ones, it's like there's a few plants that get observed. And so that bumps it up to 4.
So that was a question I had on, because you did go from 2 to 4 versus the last monitoring
Yeah.
on the clusters.
Mhm.
So where are the new clusters? Like you have that map.
Yeah,
that showed the blue.
they are, let me go back here.
Yeah.
This map, yeah. So there's 4 clusters that were observed originally back in the first survey. There's the one that's labeled Nat West over by the boardwalk. Then there's Nat North, which is sort of 3 areas there adjacent to the Sand and Sea homes. Then there's Nat South, the 3rd one, which is just north of the volleyball courts. Then the 4th one is hard to see. It's Nat East. It's over by San Antonio, where that entrance to the site is. So we saw some plants over at that one this past year, and also at Nat South by the volleyball courts. And apparently, previously they hadn't found any plants there.
So those you think are, those Nat East, you think those 9 ones that you have there are like new in this report, or?
Yeah, some of them have been, I know that Joey Durrell Canepa had done some transplanting. That was a number of years back. So at this point, it's a little hard to tell what is a transplant and what is like a new recruit. I think there's some of both. Because we did observe a couple of seedlings in those areas.
Would you mind going back to the graph for a moment?
Sure.
With the percent native cover and non-native cover? So it's interesting because you actually spoke to the question of like the integrity of the data. Because one of my questions was, okay, well, we've had a gap in the data. We've had a change in who's collecting the data.
Yeah.
So you guys said you overlapped for a day.
Yeah.
I mean, but you don't feel like this is, and not to be super pejorative, but like you don't feel like this is garbage data. Like we're out here counting plants. Like so we feel like these are true trends.
Yes.
Okay. So so my question is sort of, stepping back, we started at 47% native cover. We got up to 77%. We were in the high 60s. We're now down to 54. On the non-native, we were at 23. It went up, it went down. We're, at 16. We started at 23. Like 8 years later, at least by the numbers, like not being out there.
Yeah.
It honestly doesn't look that different just by the numbers. And so my question is are we just fighting a constant rearguard action here? And, for the experts here like yourself, is there anything to the idea of, I guess, first of all, can you ever win the battle? And would it make more sense to sort of concentrate and surge resources like in a couple year period where like, hey, we're going to try to just beat this stuff back so that it's, so that it's down to a really minimal level? Would that be a more cost effective strategy, in the long term? So those are just some of the thoughts in my mind.
Yes, I think that's what's needed, and that is why I recommend that the volunteer program be supplemented by more labor, because I feel like the invasive plants are getting away from us a little bit.
The ice plant is proliferating there, right?
It is.
I've hesitated to step over and pull some of it out because it says don't touch anything, right?
Yeah.
But after today, I guess I can pull some out.
Yeah.
With supervision.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're never gonna win 100%. If we could pour a bunch of money into it for 3 years and it could look great, and then stop what we're doing, and that it's just what's gonna happen.
But it's basically impossible.
It's gonna come back. Yeah. And I've unfortunately had a project in Pacific Grove that I worked on for 10 years, and it looked great, and then the maintenance period ended, and the ice plant just started to come back in. And I'm slowly watching it reinvade. So that would be what would happen here if we just stopped doing what we're doing. But like I said, I do think what's needed is an increase in the level of effort to get back ahead of the invasive plants. As far as the native cover, starting at 47 and going up to 77 and dropping to 54, like I said, some of that's explained by the reinvasion of restored areas by ice plant. Some of it has to do just with the composition of the native plant community. Oftentimes when when you're restoring a site and doing a lot of weed control work and disturbance, you get certain species that are short-lived, certain native species that are short-lived that come in very rapidly and contribute to a lot of the native cover. And then after a few years, they tend to die off, and you're left with the longer-lived plants that either were there in the first place or slower to get going. So just looking at the results, and I explained some of this in the report, that I think that's another reason why that native cover value has dropped from a few years back.
Do you think it makes sense that the native would have increased against a backdrop of less rainfall? Does that make sense to you? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, a big rain year is gonna influence the native cover somewhat because the annual species are gonna be more prolific in a big rain year, whereas if it's a drought year, they might hardly be there. So that'll contribute to some fluctuation. But a lot of the plants that make up this cover we're measuring, they're perennials and they last for a long time. So like a drought or rain is not really going to increase their spread significantly. So I mean, you got that spike in
18, 19.
Yeah. Well, there was a drought year there before it. So, I mean, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Any other comments?
So I looked at this, and so you've removed about 24 tons of stuff you didn't want there since the beginning of this timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that I would assume is the narrow leaf and the Cape ice plant.
The highway ice plant?
Yeah.
That's probably most of the weight, yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that they've ruined a lot of annual plants too, but yeah.
Yeah, so if, let's say, there was an increased effort of whatever percentage you would think would be right to maybe not get rid of all the ice plant in a year or two, but just step out the process so we'll just have so much less ice plant in the long term than we have right now from what we've done before.
Yeah.
You must have something in your mind. Yeah,
I do.
let's get another
I do.
10 volunteers out there, you know, every month or every 2 weeks during this period of time.
Yeah.
Again, I'm assuming if you have too many volunteers there at once, you're also doing some disturbing you don't want to do.
Yeah, you need
So
to.
it's kind of a balance.
Right.
But you might have in your mind, and I'm sure you do, of, yeah, we need to increase the effort. Are we talking about just adding another 2 or 3 volunteers in there, like once every 2 weeks that can spend 2 hours on ice plant, or do you have?
Yeah, I mean, like this past year, 0.7 tons were removed. For me, just hand waving. I mean, I would want that number to be more like 10 tons. I think you could easily remove 10 tons of ice plant. Yeah.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. It's
Okay, I've never walked beyond the boardwalk or between the tennis courts and the stairs, so I haven't seen a lot of it. It's there. And
Yeah.
you can get the bird's eye view.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me that's possible.
It is, and like I said, I think the volunteers are great, and I want to see them continue to go. For me, my personal experience, I mean, you're not going to make volunteers work for 8 hours a day.
Oh, no.
Hauling ice plant, but that's what's needed. is that somebody needs to go out there and work for 8 hours a day for like a couple of 6 weeks.
Well, this is what I want to know.
Yeah.
So it's really heavy, is what
Yeah, heavy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I think
I'll
there's
get back
things.
to reality, and
I think there's
coffee
other.
and
Yeah.
donuts will not make a difference.
No.
For 2 hours a day showing up,
Yeah.
4 days a week for 6 months.
Yeah.
It's not going to really. Okay.
I think there's other things that volunteers can focus on that are more sort of realistic for them, expect them to do. But I don't think it's the ice plant removal. The site-wide ice plant removal is one of those things.
Okay. Thank you.
John, to visualize this for like when I'm sending guys out to work,
what is the tonnage look like? Like, what does a yard, like 3 by 3 by 3 of ice plant weigh? Like, what does a ton look like? Is there, I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't have that number on the top of my head. I've done that little exercise before. The patch that your guys pulled out, I think they spent 3 days on it or something like that. That was probably about the size of the front of this room. I mean, that was probably a ton.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's mostly water,
Right.
9 pounds a gallon for water.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very heavy.
That's a pail like this. You can visualize that's a lot of ice plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's very slow going. I'd make this mistake myself every time when I look at a patch and think, oh, that's not that big. Like, you know, I can pull that out. But once you start doing it, you quickly realize how difficult it is. And I don't think we want to use herbicides anymore. So we're left with hand labor. And the longer we let it go, the more work it's going to be, obviously. So yeah, I think the next 3 years, let's say, that would be a pretty good window to ramp stuff up a little bit. I think there could be some benefit in propagating some native plant material and replanting a few areas. I don't think that there's a lot of plant material that needs to be put in because the habitat is so dense, and we're not talking about huge contiguous areas of ice plant. It's just these patches that are creeping into the restored habitat. So about a little bit of nursery grow out of native plants and planting, I think, would be something that we'd want to look at concurrently with that increased ice plant removal effort.
Particularly, I think in that north of the boardwalk area that you highlighted in green in the map as potential, because that's pretty empty right now. On the north side of the boardwalk, right? There's just just a lot of, there's not a lot. It was identified as a potential planting area, but it was
that's a potential lupin area. Right, and that's a very hot little microclimate there. There's only a few species of plants that seem to do well in that spot. So it's perfectly normal and natural for dunes to have areas with very low plant cover, as you see when you walk around. It just has to do with the various microclimates and the way the wind interacts with the topography, things like that, and the subsurface moisture. So, but yeah, for me, if we were to do any planting, what we would do is remove a patch of ice plant and then stick native plants in where that ice plant was.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in the chambers that would like to make a comment? Dale?
Hello. I'm not prepared for this, but I'll bring it up. So I used to work in the North Dunes with volunteers. I used to take my native plant class there, and we had big groups, like 20 people, and I had a cart at the time. It somehow disappeared from the Forest Theater the last month, but it was a heavy-duty cart that I could haul stuff out in. And it's not nothing to haul tons of stuff, and we had tons of stuff from up that boardwalk all the way to 4th Avenue, stick it in the truck and then go dump it, or drag it across with the volleyball group. We had probably 15 of them at one point, and we had to drag it across the sand over to the parking lot. And it's not easy. I mean, I just about killed myself going up that boardwalk. But we had a situation that I won't get into where it had to do with the beach cleanup policy and all of that we decided to pull out of the North Dunes. It just got sort of risky, it almost seemed, because it's a highly controlled situation. And there was just some things that happened. So we stopped doing it. It was partly because the changeover with Joey, and there wasn't anybody managing the volunteers, and they wanted us to pay for it, which we weren't going to do. So I think that's been solved, right, Mary? So I'm willing to forget all that. I've got some situations coming up, and we can talk about this offline, obviously, with a lot of students, hundreds of students, that I need to find a 3-hour volunteer job for. We also have the volleyball people who are willing to do this, and I can reach out to them. There's some Carmel Cares volunteers that might be willing to do it. So in high school students, we have those too, reaching out, even middle school students. So if you want to re-engage with that at this point, and we also have some new people here, let's do that. Let's have a discussion. Maybe we can have coffee and figure out how we can, because technically we could get hundreds of people to go do this. I'm very familiar with the challenges of keeping ahead of weeds. It's challenging, but a little bit at a time, you can make some progress.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dale.
Thank you so much. Melanie?
What a great job you guys have done. Oh, I mean, such an improvement, so beautiful. All I wanted to know was, in this whole process, why did we remove so many cypress and the Monterey pines? Because they're indigenous to that habitat. And Monterey pines particularly love sandy soil. So I'm just curious. I'm not here criticizing. I'm just here asking the question. Since we want natives in this area, and there's no one who hates ice plant more than me, I'm so thrilled about the progress that you all have made, and it's a constant effort. So I really appreciate that. It's just a tremendous amount of work and effort. But can someone answer the question of why did we remove the trees down there? What was the purpose of that? Or was there some particular problem? Do you know, Justin?
I just think it would be a clash with the smaller dune plants. The one thing about Monterey pines, and especially Monterey cypresses, is things don't like to live underneath them. Mm-hmm. So I think that it was more of, I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't remember. We haven't done a lot of work since I've been down there. Mm-hmm. I think that as they have died, we've been taking them out, and it's more to keep it more of a dune habitat with smaller dune plants and stuff that's not going to really take over like cypresses. Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah. They're over competition from the larger trees.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can we ask John? Would it be appropriate to? We're looking for places to put some more pine trees, and would it be appropriate to introduce to plant any more trees in there, or do you think we should just focus on the dune?
I wouldn't do any active tree planting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you come to the podium to speak? Thank you. Thank you.
I wouldn't recommend doing any active tree planting in North Dunes.
Okay.
I think what was explained as the reason why the trees were removed is very sound, and I mean, there's no reason to take out trees that are there. Take them out if they die, but certainly don't plant new ones.
Okay. Thank you for your perspective.
Can I ask you a question? I'm so sorry,
Yes.
as you're sitting down.
Please also come. Yeah.
This just seems like a war of attrition. What are the dunes supposed to be like? I feel like nature is sort of taking control and just making it what it is, and we're sort of trying to bring it back to what we want it to be. What's your vision for it? What are we wanting it to be?
Well, I mean, the vision for what it should be, or its new version of itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like we have done a good job of essentially attaining that. It's just a matter of keeping it there and not allowing it to revert back to an area that is dominated by things like ice plant, because
which are invasive.
They're invasive. They threaten species diversity. They threaten the Tidesfrum's lupin population. They're not as good for wildlife habitat. Birds, legless lizards, insects, all kinds of different things. So we don't want nature to just do what it's wanting to do and allow those more aggressive plants to come back in, because they're not indigenous to this area.
Right. Is there something natural that would discourage their growth that we know of scientifically?
I'm not aware of something like that. I mean, like an insect or something,
or another plant, or another. Is there something that would discourage their growth? We're talking about trees. We are letting in more light, but we're letting in more light that's helping the non-native plants grow, as what I'm guessing also. Is there something that we just know of that could maybe, because it seems like such an effort, such a Herculean effort, is there anything that we could plant, or, that would...
There's really nothing that you can plant that is going to outcompete ice plant.
Okay. So they're in, and we just need to keep...
Yeah.
Fighting. Okay.
Another reason why it's not so great to have pines and cypresses is not only the shading, but they also drop a lot of material, and that can change the composition of the plant community on the ground. Mm-hmm. And it also adds nutrients to what should just be like clean sand.
Right.
That's what the dune species want to grow in, and that's what they do best in. When you start manipulating the nutrient levels in the sand and the soil, then a lot of the annual grasses tend to come in more aggressively. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that I know the volunteers have been fighting for a long time, are the annual European grasses. Mm-hmm. And they're particularly prolific under the pines in that area over by the boardwalk. Yeah. You can plant woody shrubs and maybe have a little bit of an effect on the annual grasses, but not the ice plant.
Do you know when the ice plants were introduced to the area and how?
Gosh, someone else probably knows that answer.
Knew it at one point.
I mean, I've heard things like ship ballast. So going back to the 1800s, probably.
Hundreds.
From Europe.
It's over hundreds.
Yeah, I mean, it's from South Africa. So ship ballast, intentional planting by the army on the dunes to stabilize the
soil,
the wind, blown sand. It's very effective at doing that. I think those are the two main reasons.
Okay.
The narrowleaf ice plant, I'm not sure where that one came from. That may have been a garden escape. I'm not certain.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Do we have anybody online? I can't see on the screen that wants to comment. No?
No.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was a really fantastic presentation. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, take that out.
Okay, and with that, sure. Mm-hmm.
Subject change to ice plant suddenly. I'll comment on the challenges of ice plant because we're faced with it obviously on Scenic Pathway, which we've worked on for 4 years. And we've had now probably 202 weekly sessions with 3 professional gardeners and 5 to 13 volunteers. It's a lot of man hours. And every single week we have to work at it. And at one point the ice plant was actually all the way down to the sand, the entire length of the pathway. And we had to remove all of it over a period of 6 months. So if you don't keep at it every week, and maybe, I mean, if we're really serious about taking care of it, I mean, Hans sort of got to this. If we're serious about this, we really should sit down and come up with a maintenance plan. And if it means we have to get a group of volunteers out there at least once every other week so we can at least mimic what we're doing on Scenic. The other thing we've done is eventually we'd like the ice plant to be gone, right? It's not native. So what we've done with Alan Wheat's direction is every week there are some natives growing on the bluff, they just get overpowered. So we take the ice plant and we physically move it away to give a little space. And if you go down there, you'll see the seaside daisies and others are actually thriving. So eventually we just keep moving back and moving back. But there are also places where there's nothing, like down by San Lucia, which I'd love to talk to you about. Maybe we could talk about agendizing that, because it's a serious problem, and we need to do something about it because it's disappearing. So, but at this point, we should get ice plant growing there, and I've got a plan to do that. But it's a challenge, but it's not there's a lot of plants over there by the Dunes house along the north side. And we have had the possibility of having big work crews go in there, and you have to wear leather chaps. I mean, it's the blackberry brambles and all that. It can be done. And the other thing we can do is we could do fundraising and we could hire, I have contractors that we could go in there and they could wreak havoc on it quick. I mean, professionals can do things fast and they know how to haul the stuff out. So if the commission is serious about working with the garden club and so on, I mean, let's put a plan together because it's not impossible. All right, thanks.
Okay.
It's a great suggestion, thank you. Okay, I think it's time for the July Foresters Report. Justin?
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so this is for the City Foresters Report for last month, July 2024. We pretty much covered everything in terms of the forest master plan. We laid out the schedule, and we're hoping to get a draft very shortly, so we can start getting into that and presenting that to the steering committee. The big news here, Tom just gave me this early last week, that we spent $902,434.61 out of $925,000, which was 97.6% of our budget for tree contract work. We got a lot done up to the wire, or down to the wire, with Taupe doing a lot of work. The final weeks of of the last fiscal year, and that's really, for a number like that, that's a really, really good number to hit. We got all of our change orders done. All the tree contractors are ready to go. Taupe's last month cleared the pathway going down Rio towards the Mission at the corner of Santa Lucia. That not only was a obstruction for viewing when you're driving, but also just really nasty, all honey locusts, just giant 12-foot tall bushes with thorns. That's all gone, and we're trying to figure out how to eradicate it, and also some poison oak down the road. And then now we're just ready to just shoot off task orders with trees and stumps. And as a part of going forward next month in the Foresters Report, we'll have a report card on where we are with the catch-up that we're all trying to do with the numbers that Davey gave us. The tree crews last month, they planted 6 trees, picked up 7 piles of logs left by PG&E, pruned 22 trees, and removed 9 dead, dangerous, or dead or dangerous trees and 5 stumps. They helped the Friends of Mission Trail Nature Preserve by spending almost a week just picking up the piles those guys create. The person that they have is just a machine. I think Greg said he's almost totally eradicated the hemlock. There's always every day you go in there, there's new piles everywhere. And they did some more weed whacking in Upper Forest Hill Park. Pretty sure that Dale covers pretty much in his update that the Carmel cares what they've been doing, but in the last month we finished the permit for the scenic hardway the pathway hardscape project, and the Ocean Avenue medians were completed, which is really awesome, just in time for Car Week. They didn't quite hit 4th of July, right? Almost, so close.
We didn't want to risk it.
Yeah, but they're there for Car Week, so everyone can view them behind a nice, safe fence. Because, like we said, that if people are complaining about the fences, that you can't see the plants, but at the same time, if they're not there, there'd be 20 picnics on each island on those rocks, and those plants would just be obliterated.
Yeah.
We took in 46 permit applications, with 9 of them being inspection requests, issued 31 permits. Required the replanting of 71 trees, permitted the removal of, where'd it go? Sorry about that. Oh, there it is. 16 trees and 5 prunings, and required the replanting of 26 trees, we took in 183 tickets and got back to 167, closed out 167 tickets. And we started to, at the end of last month, the beginning of this month, increase the replanting requirement on city trees. So we're actively moving towards either a 3-for-1 or a 4-for-1, so to make sure that we're giving ourselves amount of trees to plant to keep in line with trees being removed. Because not only are we, I think Peter mentioned this, and also it's in the goals for the upcoming master plan, if we take out a 80-foot tree with a 40-foot canopy spread, a 15-gallon tree, 1-for-1 doesn't recover that canopy coverage. So we're trying to do higher rates, thinking that some may die or some may not take, and if they all take, that's good, and we go through and thin out the ones that don't do good later. So we're just trying to really increase the tree planting this year. We have 45 cypress seedlings that I've been growing at Public Works, and about 15 pines, and I'm trying to make a nursery, and we're trying to get native seedlings and native genetic stock that we're planting. Any questions?
I had a question just on the data. I guess it's on looks like maybe page 57 of the PDF, at least on my iPad here.
Okay, which one is it?
Which chart is it?
It is a green chart. It's a table.
The permitted?
Yes,
Permitted
that's
removal.
right. And so the question I have is, there are 116 total removals.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like 71 required plantings. Is that right?
Yes.
And so my question was,
Year to date?
what's that?
Was that the year to date?
Year to date. Yeah. And so my question was, this chart is permitted removals and required planting. So this is not inclusive of planting that you're doing independently.
That's
right.
just what's attached to city permits. If a resident puts a permit for a city tree or a private tree, the planting we do, we go above and beyond the stuff that's permitted, but it's going back years. We have just kind of a running tally that we keep to see how many we need to plant and to catch up with what has been taken out in the city.
And is that in the normal report here, or is that's not something we track on a?
No, I mean we should, but it was before me, and there was another forester before me. Before the previous forester was here for 38 years, and I don't remember how long exactly he was the forester. So he had a lot of institutional knowledge, and I think kept mostly in his up here and in yellow notebooks.
Yeah.
So I think it is good to keep going forward and making part of it'll be part of the catch-up report card of what we're taking out, what's being required, and how many are actually going in the ground, and that should be another section in the report.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I almost feel like it's almost more valuable to know, like, in total, like, it's interesting to know what's happening on private property, but sort of in total, how are we doing in terms of planting, relative to total removals?
Well, did you see this one? They have this one. This is the city year over year.
Yep.
And so if you look at 2024, like through July, we're tracking pretty similarly to last year, with the exception of we have more planting already, right?
Yeah.
Than all of we have more planting this year than all of last year.
Yep.
And more stump removal. But I think the scorecard, the catch-up plan scorecard, will be really helpful.
Yeah.
Particularly because we identified, right, certain trees that need attention.
Yeah, and this the other thing about this report that this has been going back forever. The interesting thing about this is we monitor this calendar year, but everything we do internally is fiscal year. So I don't know if there's a translation or just that's the way it is. So this is the one thing we're going calendar year. So.
But it's helpful to see the that this
definitely.
year that there's been an increase in planting and stump removals, which is
definitely.
And can you remind me of the stump? The stump one was the other one. That's like my new That's sort of what I'm focused on now. I walk around now and I can't see anything but stumps.
Once you think about it,
totem poles with power lines on them everywhere I go. I see them now.
Once you think about it, you're like, now I see them everywhere.
Exactly.
You want what the number is, or?
So I had a recollection somewhere the number 500 stuck in my mind, but
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That's a great number.
it's more okay.
It's closer to 1,000.
So
And that's what's tracked. I'm pretty sure there's probably more than that.
And so my question was, our goal, I think I saw this in a previous report a couple months ago, but our goal is sort of how many a year?
Well, the catch-up has a 3-year
What we took to council, I believe it was 3 years, so roughly 300 a year.
300 a year.
With the city, we have a small stump grinder that we can get. They did 4 today.
Yeah.
So they can do a decent amount, but the bigger ones we have to be contracted, and they go a lot slower.
So we've done 60, but this was basically the end of the last fiscal year, right? In a way, right?
This whatever's on. These charts are all calendar year.
Exactly.
So the second half of last year and what's going on this year.
But basically, by the time we get to the end of calendar year 2024, we should be adding another 150 stumps to this.
Yes, and we'll see that in this. So what happened was, the data you put together, we have a certain, the catch-up is all the stumps, the
poor trees, very poor trees, and dead trees.
And in the very poor category, there were some recommended for removal and some just recommended for pruning. So Justin's going to build a scorecard of everything that was identified, and then we're going to see a monthly reporting on that. And so the goal right now is between the city's contribution and the contractors within 3 years to have all that caught up.
And go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I just have a question. Going forward, can we just have the stumps removed at the time of tree removal? I mean,
we do.
Can we just?
We do try, but it's a separate crew usually, and
it doesn't have to be. It depends on who your contractor is.
It doesn't, but at the same time there's a lot of backup. Like it has to be underground service alert 811 because to grind the stump, especially to the level where we want to go down to be able to plant a 24-inch box tree, you need to make sure there's not a gas line underneath it.
Okay, you don't have to go down that deep. And I have a few places, and we've done a lot of stump grinding in our day.
Well, we can surface grind them, but but the goal is to make new planting places.
To plant a tree.
Right.
So we need at least 20 inches, and there are a lot of utilities in there.
I have a feeling if we start to make that more of a mandatory requirement, that wouldn't everybody step up? Wouldn't our contractors that we use, those are the contractors that we use, the ones who can do this. And as long as it's not an emergency, I understand if it's an emergency and we have to remove a tree, but if we have any foresight, can we just have the power companies or whoever?
Well, it's on the task orders to cut the tree down and grind the stump.
Right.
So they all do it, but it's not usually, it's really hard to do it the same day unless they're really small. For like a 80-foot tree, that's going to be like a 10-hour day already. So it's like you can't fit the stump grinding in if that stump itself is going to take 6 hours.
Can they just come back the next day?
It's all about how the crew makeup is because they've got the tree crew and the stump crews off somewhere else. That's a question.
Catch-up plan, though, I thought in the catch-up plan, the goal was for any tree that needed to be removed as part of that plan, the stump would be removed with that removal, and the site would be prepared for a new tree to be planted because we added the cost of the replanting.
And it all is, but
that one, yes.
They all are. I just can't guarantee it's done the same day.
It doesn't have to be done the same day, but just going forward, just so we can start to get a better handle on this, if we can just start to do it.
It's on the task.
And I know you're newer too, but just taking us forward,
Yeah, I mean, it's all our task orders say grind the stump too.
Okay, good.
So
that's
they're supposed to.
Okay.
And then, Chair, if I may, and then my other question was the totem poles, so the ones with the wires. What is I think I talked to Bob at one point about this, but what is the plan, on those?
To make them all go away, if we can get the utility companies to play ball, but certain ones are very difficult to get a hold of.
But like specifically, like do we have like a a goal, on stumps, we have a goal of 300 a year. Do we have a goal of taking down X number of totem poles per year?
Only pass that to the project manager on that, Tom Ford.
The totem pole.
Remember,
Tom
Ford,
Totem Pole.
Public Works. Don't start that
Senior
nickname.
manager.
So we had started with our superintendent, Rob Culver. Historically, he had helped out significantly with contacting the utility companies. Justin and I did go through our new software that we had received via our inventory of Davie, and we found 131 of the totem poles. We sent the entire file to each of the 3 utility companies. In retrospect, I don't think they appreciated
The amount of
the quantity of trees. I mean, they've responded very well when we said on the northeast corner of 8th and whatever, can you come and, is this your line? And if so, can you come and remove it? And they've been responsive to that in the past. I think we should, and I'm happy to take this on. I've discussed this with Justin. I think that's why you looked over. I think we need to take a little bit more of a on the ground approach. And I think it's going to take a lot more time than sending out one list of 130 trees to 3 companies and saying, can you tell us can you go through 130 sites and tell us which one are yours and remove them? I think it's going to take a lot more work, and this is part of our work planning, is now that we started a new fiscal year, we kind of that's when we set out our goals. And so this had just come up. This is the pertinent time to ask. It's a great question. They're ugly. They need to be removed. We all want them removed. We're all on the same page there. So the actual on-the-ground plans is me putting in more time to with these companies. That's the best I have for the time.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm glad that you're the guy that's on it, because that gives me some confidence. I guess, have we successfully, like say in the past year, have we successfully been able to get one of these things down?
Oh yeah.
Quite a number of them. But the balk request was the one that not only fell through, but we had requested a second time, and that had fallen through. So that means that it's the wrong approach. But that's okay. We want to allocate resources to do that, and that's what we intend to do. So yes, one of our goals for sure this fiscal year is to get a whole chunk of them done, even if it's just from one utility company. If we had a few dozen of them removed, we would feel like we're making some progress there.
I was going to say, just to have set some kind of numerical goal, I think as a group would be valuable. If it's like, hey, do 20 this year or something,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you might consider, I don't know, this is for you all as a group to think about, you might consider adding that to the catch-up and looking at it on a 3-year basis, right? And
yeah.
I mean, it might be, I don't know if it would be, if you just put it into the things that we're catching up on.
Sure.
And see, it isn't to say, and just to test that out as an option, right? It might be a way to also encourage support from utility companies if they realize that they're also participating in a plan, right? And there's a public expectation. I don't know, but it might be worth considering.
Yeah, and a good option.
I have a question. So are we talking about, there's power lines, cable, and some telephone, I guess, are still out there? Is that what we're talking about? Are we talking about PG&E?
AT&T
right?
and Comcast.
So cable and telephone.
Okay, so it's cable and, okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of these can be identified when you're looking at them. You know what's what. I mean, I know what's what. We've got the same sort of a thing, and I know that's the cable, that's the power. The power's up higher. I mean, you just know what's what. Can we identify it so we can break it down? It's a pretty easily identifiable thing to know, at least if it's cable or power.
Yeah.
So we're not sending the full list, but we can,
Sure.
narrow it down a little bit.
That is a piece of the puzzle that we can do.
Okay.
Knowing which company that is.
Yeah, once it's cable, you might.
Now you're talking about a ton of, the reason why we've had to go one by one in the past, it actually takes quite a bit of picking up the phone, trying to get a phone number for the resident, asking them who had connected it. Oh, that was the previous owner, and we don't even use that line anymore, and I don't even know what company did that, and can you give me a call back? We
Power we do know.
It's kind of.
So power we do know, but right, the power is PG&E.
Yeah.
Done. And then it's the cable then that we're not always sure about. Although I'm assuming most of it was Comcast, and it was turned to whatever it's evolved into now. I don't even know. Xfinity or So there's that. Is there any? Are they allowed to use our trees? Is that something that they're allowed
not anymore
to do?
Technically, their lines are there and they have utility easements, and I don't know if
for
that's
our trees though.
When they remove them, they do. So it's in people's house deeds that there's an electrical easement, a utility easement.
Right.
So,
but for trees though, are they allowed to use our city trees?
They are allowed to cut down our city trees.
Yeah,
So
they have.
So they can use
own
it
them,
for.
basically.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See what having a light agenda does in terms of discussion
It's in the
monthly forestry plan?
There might be something in the Public Resources Code, because that's where the utility pruning, utility removal for electrical reliability is. It's like PRC 4292 or 4293.
Right.
Because 4291 is the fire code, so it's in one of those two is
the code for that.
Is the code. So it's probably somewhere PRC 42
Should find
something.
it out. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Tom. With that, we'll move to the Acting Public Works Director's report. Mary?
All right, thank you. So I'll just jump to the things that pertain to this commission. And for the City Council meeting in July, there was resolutions that were adopted that was to allocate funds to the on-call landscaping and maintenance services contract. And there also was a presentation by Justin and Kelly regarding the urban forest the forest management plan community survey. So both of those things were presented to the Forest and Beach. If you wanted to go back and look, I'm sorry, to the City Council. And then under environmental programs, we were working with Nikki Netoff on the timing to mow Martin Meadows at Mission Trails Nature Preserve, and so there had been some requests by neighbors to mow it before the 4th of July, which the city did. We went out there to do that to reduce the fire risk, but we also it's in compliance with the plant species Hickman's onions timing for seeding. So that happened. And then under the CIP programs, we have different contractors that are managing projects, and under Wallace Group, we have the Shoreline Infrastructure Repair Project, and we have sent out a request for proposal, and that project is going to be, the bids on that are going to be due at the end of this month. And so that was, that one we did receive 3 proposals on that, and staff is reviewing those proposals, and we're going to meet and take a look at those and move forward with that project. And under additional capital improvements, the Mission Trails Nature Preserve 3 drainage projects. I think last time we talked about that and we were getting started on it, and we did have to do a biological survey prior to construction. You have to do it within a few days of construction starting. And they did find several dusky-footed wood rat middens that were in or near the construction area. And so right now we're working with the Department of CDFW to try to reduce the size of the buffer zone. And we're trying to get an agreement with CDFW so that construction can start, because we basically have to start that before the rainy season. So we have all these different permits that we're trying to comply with, and so that's why that one is delayed currently. Under street maintenance, we had some requests that the staircases at 8th and 9th Beach Stairs we wanted to get those open to the public, so we did rent a skid steer and moved some sand under both 8th and 9th Street. 8th's been open, but then we opened up 9th Street once we were able to move sand so that it was safe for the public to go over the sand. And the last thing that I wanted to say was that in April, Justin obtained his Urban Forestry and Community Forester certification from the Society of American Foresters. So congratulations. And that completes my report.
Any questions or discussion for Mary? No? Oh, Tom. Tamara?
I do have one, but I don't want to open up a can of worms. But I know there's some conversation about the pickleball / tennis course. So
We'll talk about it in
is that
future agenda items.
future agenda? That's what I was going to ask you. Is that a future agenda
Give us
item?
1 second. Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
sure.
get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything on Public Works? Okay, on to future agenda items. Do you want to share what?
To introduce.
Yeah.
So at the last city council meeting, there was a presentation where Brandon Swanson had suggested bringing the pickleball courts to the Forest and Beach Commission.
Yeah.
And listening to the public and trying to understand what the concerns are, and then moving forward with having the Forest and Beach Commission continue to see if we needed to put any parameters around those courts, because currently there aren't any. They're painted for pickleball, but some of the neighbors have had complaints that there's a lot of noise and people that are now, the tennis courts were fairly not used that a ton, but now the pickleball courts are used a lot. So that should be coming, I believe. We'll have to find out, but potentially in September. This year, before the end of the year, we for sure need to bring it to the Forest and Beach Commission.
I think what City Council voted on Tuesday was to ask the Forest and Beach Commission to explore
I saw
whether
that.
we needed to have a policy.
Right.
I attended the meeting, and there were council allowed. I think there were maybe 12 people who spoke. The agenda topic was specifically, should Forest and Beach take this up or not, right? But the people who spoke had a point of view on use of the courts, pickleball, etc. So it seems like for us to take this on, Mary, I think obviously we'll need to put it on the agenda. I do think it would be helpful as background for the commission to understand what if any are the current regulations with the tennis courts. You know, one of the council members suggested we take a field trip, which is probably not a bad idea. You know, is there signage there presently or not? And for us to and I think also it brings up a bigger point about the tennis courts are in the Forest Hill Park area. We also have all that playground equipment in the lower Forest Hill Park, so it's just a question, you know, how are we handling policies, rules, signage around our public spaces that might be recreational in nature? Because I think anything we decide for the tennis pickleball courts has an impact, you know, policy, you know, potential impact on how we think about our parks. And I know we'd love to have more use of the playground equipment and more families down there using those parks, right? So I just think we probably have some work to do to be able to be prepared to have that. And it may not be as simple as doing it in one session. We may have may take us more than one meeting to come to some recommendation. I don't know, maybe is it fair to ask for our next meeting to just understand what our policies are around our public recreational spaces like that? Like, do we have signs posted? Do we have ordinances? Do we?
Yeah, we can do a presentation on that. And then I still think maybe before we get into the meat of it, we also do a field trip.
Yeah.
So you can see, I hope to have the broken swing fixed by then. The parts should be, they just shipped, so they should be here soon. And then we'll get that fixed. And we also asked for a full playground equipment inspection.
Oh, nice.
And then I have been in contact with Shannon at the City of Monterey, who's their Parks and their Recreation Department manager, on what their processes are, because I sit on that board in Monterey. So I've been asking her how we can, use their expertise and experience to how we can maintain that park. So,
That's great. So maybe we could put that on the next agenda.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I think what I heard expressed in the, certainly just by the residents that came to City Council this past Tuesday, was the high concern seemed to be weekend, I heard sun up to sundown on weekends, so I don't know if it's appropriate or if the commissioners would be amenable to a weekend visit, but I think being there, placing our field trip when we're hearing neighbors say is the pain point. I certainly am happy to go by on a weekend, but it might be nice to be able to.
I think that might need to be like a individual thing, because
Okay.
honestly, if we do take a field trip, if we take a field trip at 1:30 on a Thursday,
Yeah.
you're gonna get a full
it's hopping.
You're gonna get a full taste of what it's like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then-
So yeah,
So,
it's always
Okay.
busy, because
All day,
we
every
did a
day.
lot of work up there, and they no complaints, because everyone talked about how nice it looks, but it's never not busy. I don't think I've ever seen it empty now.
okay.
It's that
Recently, all day, every day.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Now, back when they
so
were
maybe,
tennis
I don't know, would
courts.
that be, does that seem like to add
but-
to the
Sure.
September meeting?
Yeah,
to
and I
visit?
think we should do
1:30?
maybe do if unless we have anything else big, start at 1:30 so we can do pickleball, the courts, and then also go take a look at some of the stuff, the playground equipment, plus we've been working pretty intensively in Lower Forest Hill Park, and it'd be nice to show it off.
Yeah, I've seen some of it, it's good.
And I think in terms of just guidance, how do you feel about, how gaining public input other than just people coming and speaking here, right? Like, I think having the background from the city on how we're approaching parks in general and what our signage and ordinances are would be useful background, and we can see the courts, but do people have ideas on how we want to get input on the topic? We had it there. I took notes of all the public comments that were made at the council meeting.
Yeah. Do we think we need more than just making it an open where they can come to our meeting and just give public comment? Do you think we need more than that, potentially, or?
I mean,
I
what
think
about posting, either sending something or going door to door with something to the people within like a block radius, within earshot radius, and just get some
Almost
data
like
on
the-
it, how
like when
they
you're-
feel about it.
Yeah, like when you're doing a renovation or something, when they post,
Mhm.
yeah, to just
I
reach
think
out
it
to
would be.
people.
I think it would be useful, just based on what we heard, to hear what the
Mhm.
residents' perspective are. It was
Absolutely.
interesting.
Oh, yeah,
I will
absolutely.
say it was. Chip Rarig made this comment, which was spot on. It was, there were clearly two different points of view, but everybody who spoke was like respectful, right? Looking to find a solution. It wasn't as divisive as some of the other issues we've recently had.
I think the other
in
thing,
front of council, which was nice, right? But I think this might be a good example of how to get. It would be helpful to have their perspective. There also were a number of the pickleball. We have someone who's in our community who's a USA Pickleball ambassador, who was describing, there's lower balls that aren't as loud, paddles.
They showed them to us. There's like padded balls and different rackets that are way quieter, and they're pretty responsible and they're pretty receptive. The biggest issue is, like you say, the weekends. It's the tourists. It's the people that are coming in that might not know the rules or care about the rules. They're just looking for somewhere to play, because other local cities have been so hardcore with the backlash from the community. Like Pacific Grove is like certain days, certain times. Monterey restriped one tennis court at Via Paraiso, but that's now only 2 courts total, and pretty much every time we go there, it's always full and it's always lines.
We probably should save this for the
Yeah.
agenda
Mm-hmm.
item.
I was just gonna say, like, in
the actual
whatever you guys
discussion.
prepare, though, it would be helpful to
Yeah.
know some of those examples of, because this is not a
Yes.
novel concept or a novel issue that
Yeah.
cities are dealing with. So
Yeah.
just some of the ways that
And a
other
lot of cities have
municipalities
addressed
have
it.
dealt with it.
A lot
Yeah.
of cities have addressed it. So
I think for
Yeah.
us, it was gaining input on how do we want to approach this as a group, because I don't think we'll have a policy in one session.
Yeah,
But
staff
if-
does have contact with both the pickleball community and residents, and we can post, we can we can get the word out and let them know that it's coming. So
Okay, I just think it would be, let's not set the expectation we'll have a policy in
No,
the meeting
definitely,
that it first
no.
comes up.
Just-
That would be,
just-
I
I
think
think
this will
even-
take some work.
I think even that's what council said, just to kind of start it. Like, we're not going to be able to fix this or come up with a solution overnight.
And I think the only other comment was that one council member did suggest that they hope the solution isn't just like restrictive in hours or days, but we also consider things like soundproof netting, or there's other tools, other things that can be brought to bear. That's all. Okay,
Okay.
so that was that. So we'll start
Yep,
next
September.
month?
Yeah.
Okay. The only other future agenda item that I had was on, not for September, I think it's more likely October or November, but I've had the opportunity to work a little bit with Kelly Francis, who's the head of the Carmel Cares Beach Pup Cleanup Group, doing a fantastic job. Their contribution is meaningful and significant, and so we don't really get in to see, like, just the report we had on the dunes, for example, how many people, how many man hours, how much trash is all being picked up. So I've talked to Kelly about starting a biannual reporting to this group, just so that the city has a view of how much and what a nice contribution they're making. So I think she said maybe October, November timing, she could present that. We've also talked about she has everything in a text stream, that they're working off a text chat. And so we talked about maybe, I said that I would be happy to help facilitate getting that all downloaded so that we could get it, properly analyzed, and maybe start having them tap into the app that the Monterey National Marine Sanctuary uses to track trash in this area. So there's some interesting things that she's excited about. So I told her I was happy to support her. It looks like a great opportunity for maybe some high school volunteers interested in environmental sciences that maybe we could tap into. So
they need 50 hours.
yeah, so I think there's so another opportunity to get us some more volunteers, but she was going to get back to me, but I think October, November, if everybody's amenable to that, I think that would be a nice presentation by that group.
Absolutely.
Any other agenda items?
Just a quick question before we round the corner to the winter again, just perhaps picking up on where we left off last year with some of the things we're looking at doing to just protect the erosion from storms and anything like that. Just maybe trying to get a little bit ahead of that as well in the next meeting or two.
That's a great suggestion. At some point in the fall, talking about what we can do.
Yeah.
And then I guess in the September meeting, Justin, it sounds like we maybe will be able, you'll have better insight on when Davey might deliver the draft. But I would say just for everybody on the commission, what we're really hoping is that we can get a full day working session with the steering committee and a working session on the draft. So the ask there would be that everybody do the work to get through the draft and come prepared to work, roll up our sleeves and have a working session. And that would be a working session that we would hold likely at the Sunset Center venue, that would be open to the public, but it would not be a public meeting, but a working session that we would hold in the public. Right. So it might take us 2 sessions like that to get the draft in a place to put for public comment, but I think that's so hopefully everybody late September can contribute a day. Would be great. Okay,
sounds good.
I think with that, can't see the time right now, but we are 4:20. I think With that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.